The fourth in our series of stories from prison is Paul. Now, the difficulty here is that Paul was in prison a number of times. Indeed, at one point, in order to authenticate his authority as an apostle, he says he's been in prison far more times than anybody else. Sometimes his imprisonment was being chained up in a dungeon. Sometimes it was the more civilized version of house arrest, but nevertheless curtailing his freedom. The letter to the Philippians is one of the things that he wrote while he was in prison. And there are a couple of things in there that point to the way in which he used his time in prison. He says that to the Philippian church, I want you to know that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. And he lists two ways, and I think there's a third way that we can derive ourselves from this. The first is this. He writes, "It has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ." Paul was a natural evangelist. He just loved telling people about Jesus. He loved to do that in the market square to as many people as possible. But if he couldn't do it to as many as possible, he did it to those who were there, to those who were guarding him in his prison. He didn't let that opportunity go. He cared for those people who were guarding him. Secondly, he goes on in the very next verse, this is in Philippians chapter 1, he says, "Most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear." Courage is contagious. And Christians in those days saw Paul's courage in prison, and they were emboldened the more to speak of Jesus. Now, the third thing is not something that Paul explains, but it is the very existence of this letter. Paul didn't mope at being in prison, at being confined, but saw it as an opportunity to write a letter of encouragement to his fellow believers at Philippi. Our lockdown has meant restrictions. We can't do all that we want to do. But can we, like Paul, take the opportunities that are there to speak, to be bolder, to write that letter or that email or pick up the phone to encourage somebody else who needs that encouragement? That's our challenge for today. Tomorrow, we're not taking a single Bible story, but I'm going to attempt to draw some of the threads of these stories together and draw some conclusions. Thank you.